Hey, Matt, what has the Wallabies done that England, Ireland, and even New Zealand haven't done in their last two matches?
Wins, mate. Absolute wins. I think I was about to message you on the weekend after we won and say, mate, one in a row. Look at us. But it's actually two.
It's two in a row, if you can believe it. And yep, we'll take it as Australian fans. Schmitted in, Joe Schmidt, off to a winning start. Great news for Australian rugby. Not necessarily comprehensive, but a win nonetheless, 25-16 over Wales. We're going to run through the Wallabies and see what you think as well, Matt, around some of the key positions tactically, how Joe Schmidt might have evolved the Wallabies game. We'll touch on the All Blacks and another win for the Springboks over Ireland. All right, all of that on the other side of this, you're listening to the Raw Rugby podcast. So, Matt, a little birdie tells me that you had a bit of ice cream off the back of that win on Saturday night.
These parrots, mate, they keep sharing things. Yep. So was celebrating the Wallabies win. Had a few scotches, and as it happens when I have a few scotches, I decided to order Gelato Messina, and I went for the full. I think it was 1.5 or 2 liter tub, and managed to finish it watching the All Blacks replay and then watching the South African game. So it was brilliant, mate. A cracking night. Yeah, good footy. Good food, can't complain.
Do you get Gelato Messina in Canberra?
You do. You just got to order it a week ahead. No. Uber Eats, mate, nice and quick. So yeah, very dangerous. I seem to come up with these great ideas after a couple of scotches. So yeah, we'll see.
It kind of had that bit of feeling about it though. Tom Wright was asked, is it relief that what you're feeling? And he didn't give that impression at all. He said he was pumped by the result. But it really wasn't until Tom Wright scored that try. Brilliant attacking movement, counter-attacking, poor kick from Hathaway. Tom Wright takes full advantage. Thank you very much. But it wasn't until that moment where you thought, okay, the Wallabies, they should be home.
Yeah, definitely. It was very much on a nice edge. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one, the relief. I reckon that's more fans, just because we always want them to do better or improve or whatever it is. So, but I'm glad that he said that because yeah, it shouldn't be relief. It's at the end of the day, it's a new coach. It's 1 from 1, and that's all. That's yeah, there should be a sense of joy. I think sometimes when you get the relief, you don't really encourage. It doesn't kind of encourage that to get that feeling again, and it doesn't get you excited. So yeah, look, hopefully we can build some momentum. And yeah, it was a tough old game though. Like I don't know how you felt, but 50, 60 minutes, it was like, yeah, a bit nervous.
It seemed like it was almost same old story, rinse, repeat. We've seen this. We've seen this movie before where it's tense for so long, and thankfully the war eventually breaks and the Wallabies get across. But yeah, it was watching on. I thought at the end of the first half, they had 73% of territory, the best part of 65% of possession. They had 4 entries to 1 into the 22. You just had the feeling like they should have been further in front than they were at halftime, 13-10, and one point of time it's 13-3. But I felt like, and both sides are clearly in transition, but it just looked like that, didn't it? That neither side could really take the game by the scruff of the neck.
Yeah, it was a well-balanced game, I guess, in that sense. Like you had 2 teams who were relatively evenly matched. I think for me, it felt like the Wallabies were the better team for most of that, but just struggled to kind of break free. Obviously a couple missed kicks didn't help, and a few errors here and there. But look, that's to be expected. And I think the important thing is that we got the win. And as I said earlier, hopefully we can start building some momentum, and we've definitely got an opportunity considering the next 2 matches that are in front of us before the TRC.
Yeah, definitely. We'll come to that in a moment. One area that they totally had the advantage of was the set piece, like the scrum. Taniela Tupou just going straight through, and exerting that dominance early on really set the tone. It painted a picture for the French referee that the Wallabies had the advantage at the scrum, but they also did at the line out as well. A couple of line out steals from Jeremy Williams, Liam Wright at the front. 7 debutants, a couple of those started. I think they all probably made a pretty strong impression. But let's just start with the set piece. Scrum was outstanding. We saw what Taniela can do. We're both big fans of Alan Alatoa. We probably were surprised that Taniela started ahead of him and Alan didn't have the captaincy. But that's what Taniela can do, right? He can smoke someone in the scrum, but also you give him the ball near an opposition try line, more often than not, he comes away with 5 points.
Yeah, look, and I think those selections probably go like now watching the game gives us a little bit of a glimpse into what Joe Schmidt was thinking. Even Liam Wright at 6 and then Charlie Cowell coming on, guys who are really athletic, quick off the deck. I think Liam Wright got 1 or 2 steals. Charlie Cowell, I think, even got a steal and a hand to another one. Like these have got the ability to apply set piece pressure through quick jumpers, athletic jumpers at the front there, and then having a guy like Taniela really putting pressure on at set piece. I think that's quite interesting. Probably something that I definitely didn't notice, but then as the game went on, you're like, oh, okay, maybe he's very much building that solid base, and it's not necessarily always about the tallest guys or in the line out, but guys who can get off the deck really quickly, and I think we've seen that. So really, really excited. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he switches that up every now and then, particularly with a guy like Alan. I'm sure Alan can. He's probably got the edge over Taniela around the park. Nella's probably got it more up front, but the early substitution probably shows that it's as we've said on the pod quite a few times, the bench plays a huge role, and it's not necessarily just like the leftovers. It's very much tactically a feather in a cap for us.
Yeah, well, you have to look at the box. They've reinvented what the bench really is, isn't it? Like Franz Mahoba often comes off the bench. He's regarded as their best scrummaging tight head prop, and that might have changed a little bit here and there, but 40 minutes, that's how a lot of sides, international teams see now their front rows, that they can just totally refresh them at half time or early in that second half. Yeah,
particularly if you've got the cattle and at test level, you more often than not do. Taniela's very much an X factor kind of a guy. There's not too many guys that will be pushing him backwards, and as I say, it's really interesting, I think, from Joe Schmidt tactically to pick guys who are quick off the deck for lineouts, and then a guy like Taniela who holds the scrum down, because it's a good thing to kind of build your game from, is that set piece.
Yeah, the thing I liked about Taniela as well, that before he scores that try, 2 phases earlier, he gets the open side flanker off and ensures that he doesn't steal the ball. And it's those little 1%ers that, hitting racks, which is what Jeremy Williams did really well on the weekend as well. Those sorts of things that go often unnoticed, but they're so critical. And unless you get that right, you more often than not lose games. What did you like about the first match under Joe Schmidt?
The win. I know that's kind of a little bit obvious, but the win. There's some tactical things like we just spoke about. The set piece, they kind of stood out. But building a winning culture, very much building from base up, I think is the feeling. Tactically, I was probably surprised by how much we kicked, considering particularly with Ireland, noticing how they play. But we're not Ireland, so I'm sure he'll be tinkering a few things here and there. But look, I think with Joe Schmidt, he seems like a very sensible coach. You've got a guy like Laurie Fisher, who's very hard at breakdown, who's very hard on defense. I think these are the characteristics we'll probably see evolve over time, and they're good things to build a base from. That's for sure.
Yeah, Jake Gordon, I asked him today, he was up for media, and Well, I said, look, and I thought he kicked superbly. Probably the best performance I've seen from him in gold, but his ability to relieve pressure from inside the 22 and exit there so soundly was fantastic. His first class. A couple of times when he did do contestable kicks, they got the ball back. And there was one example when I think it was in the 5th minute when Gordon puts up box kick. It hits the deck. The ball comes back and Noah puts the ball behind and doesn't find touch, but he pins Wales in their corner. And then all of a sudden, 2 phases later, because of the pressure, the Wallabies get a breakdown penalty. I think Robert Valentini's the one there. And they kick for touch. They get 3 points shortly after. And just the ability to relieve pressure was immense from Gordon. And he said that it wasn't necessarily a set plan for him to kick more, but just with the conditions, he said it was really greasy. That was perhaps why it panned out when it did. One person who had a reasonable game but didn't do the best with his clearing kicks was Filippo Daungunu, and I reckon oppositions will continue to try to exploit him there. But the one time he doesn't get to relieve the pressure and he only finds touch just outside 22, Wales managed to get a penalty try shortly after with 3 penalties in a row around the rolling more. So that's the one big area where Australian rugby needs to, and the Wallabies particularly, they struggled last year there with Pierre-Henri Bronken as the more coach. They really need to sharpen that area of the game. Noah Lolesio has come under a fair bit of scrutiny, and you always see it every time someone wears the number 10 jersey. It's like the halfback in rugby league or your centre forward. Like you just come under the microscope more than anyone else. Tim Horans talks about the low percentage play of Lolesio kicking crossfield rather than through the hands to Kellaway. It's probably only half a metre too deep or too powerful, and Kellaway just gets a fingertip on it. That turns into a story. People either blow up thinking, hang on, like, why aren't we giving this guy more time? Why are we questioning? Why are we critiquing? What did you think of Noah's game? Because there were some good elements, but also there was a couple of things where he would look back and go, I didn't make it easy for myself there by missing an early shot at goals or the simple drop from Gordon's pass.
Yeah, look, I think he's out of the gates now, and nothing's been mission critical in terms of any errors he's made. He was nervous. That was clear. Like, this is a sharpshooter, missing a couple easy kicks or one easy kick. But that's to be expected, I think. And look, I think, yeah, sure, some of the criticism is fair. He probably should have gone through their hands, all this, but we need to allow him some grace. Like he was, it's okay to be nervous before his first test back in a long time. He would have been putting himself on a lot of pressure, and I think I think this next game will be really interesting for me to see how he goes here. I think the first game is very much just kind of win, figure it out, solve some problems. But I think considering the history he's had, the past with missing out selection last year and now getting back in there, hopefully now some of that form translates from Super Rugby in. And yeah, it's natural. It's the quarterback, isn't it? It's the point guard, and it's the what's another position? Goalkeeper in ice hockey.
Ice hockey's probably stretching it for me, to be honest. But
oh god! But yeah, it's an interesting position. It's one that we love. It's a very influential position. There were a couple of things I really liked from Joe Schmidt was Jake Gordon kicking, particularly in the exits, so taking pressure off Noah, and then Noah and Tom Liner defending in the backfield. So we often had Filippo Daungunu at first receiver defending, or on the other wing, Andrew Kellaway would be defending at first off the line out. So really trying to take a little bit of pressure off these guys. I thought that was, and you see other teams have been doing it for quite a while. Wallabies did it when Rob Horn was at winger. They used to hide Bernard, not hide, but allow him for a
Hi Bernard.
Yeah, hide Bernard. Hates a tackle. No, but yeah, you know what I mean. Like, so I did like that. I thought tactically, so you're taking a little bit of pressure off the 10s by using the 9 to kick and exit a really high pressure zone, and then also defensively allowing them to sit in the backfield for a little bit and pick their chances.
Well, that's what Furi Dupree, but Conor Murray hadn't have done so successfully for so long. Like, you don't need to pass the ball 15 meters back and then compromise the ability to kick long and kick out. So I'm surprised we don't kick off 9 more, to be honest.
Yeah, it's very un-Australian in a way. Like, if you talk to the average punter, they hate it. But it is like, even Aaron Smith, he was kicking a lot off 9, and I think it's something that, look, we often like picking 9s, and I think it might be something that McDermott might struggle with in terms of selection. I remember back in the day, there was a stat, I think Nick Phipps only kicked it like twice in the whole season for the Waratahs off 9. So yeah, it's not traditionally an Australian kind of part of the game, but look, it's pragmatic. It relieves pressure, and if you think of it collectively, it takes pressure off a young 10, and I think that's smart.
It was really noticeable, particularly in the first 20-30 minutes, I thought, but there was a bit more of a kicking game. And I remember in 2020 that Hunter Paisami was doing a lot of short kicking, both grubbers, but especially grubbers. You might remember that under Dave, but we saw Lolasio's chip kick to Lucan Salakai-Loto. Now that's a pre-planned move, surely, that he kicks over the top, so Lucan knows that. But then we also saw Hunter Paisami kick across field for Liam Wright, and that was pulled off successfully. We saw a grabber that wasn't so successful when they had advantage, so managed to take 3 points. And then clearly the Lolasio chip kick that doesn't quite go to plan with Kellaway. But did you see a bit more of a short kicking game as well? Is that something that you think might have been worked on throughout the week under Schmidt?
Yeah, definitely. Wales, maybe other than, I'd say, England at the moment, usually are the highest line speed team, South Africa as well, and often get their halfback in. If you remember 19 World Cup, can't remember his name, might have been Reece Webb. No. Anyway, halfback took an intercept off Will Genya. Like, they really use their 9, and he kind of goes out of system, and he just disrupts.
Gareth Davies, that's who you're talking about.
Yeah. And look, Jake Gordon has a little bit of a similar role with the Waratahs, and it can be really, really frustrating. So I think what you saw was that chip kick to Lucan. It was a pre-planned move, knowing that they're gonna blitz, and the halfback's not going to be in that traditional half line, in behind. So I thought that was really good. It is a tough one, in terms, because I don't know if we have the execution just yet that maybe the Kiwis have or the Irish have. That crossfield kick for Andrew Kellaway that didn't come off. You compare that to a Damien McKenzie who puts it on a dime. I think it might have been for Sevu Reece.
It's a great example, isn't it? That's the difference.
It is, but what's the answer? Is it to not try it, or is it, and I think for me, it's to keep going. And
you've got to evolve
these guys.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we will stay at the world rankings that we are. So, no, I'm excited to see it. A guy like Hunter as well has really shown his kind of growth in that area with his passing game and his grubber kicks. In particular, his grubber kicks. So I think that's, it's a good asset to have. It's harder to defend. You've got to defend the backfield. You've got to defend out wide, and then it allows them to maybe square up a little bit more. So, I'd like us to have a little bit of kind of tolerance for errors because, these guys are growing, and it'll come off at some point for sure.
So Noah and Hunter, I almost felt like their performances were quite similar. A new environment, new coaching team, new tactics, and you saw throughout the Super campaign that Hunter's decision-making, but also his execution with his kicking game was first class. We didn't see that so much on the weekend. Do you think that's also an element of nervousness, but also a new plan? Because some people were saying, well, there is a reason why Josh Fluke doesn't touch the ball as much on the weekend, or the outside backs there. It's because Hunter's getting it and he's kicking it away immediately. But do you think that there's also that element of nervousness there with Hunter, perhaps?
100%. I think. Noah and Hunter, they played a fair bit in, say, the 2020, 21, even 22, and then have had a kind of a year off, and then coming back, and there very much would have been a lot of internal pressure from them personally to play well. So look, I very much look at it as like a job well done, a tick, that they're out of the gates now, and we can start performing. And these are guys who have been very, very good this year in Super Rugby, and I think they definitely deserve a few more chances at least. And look, they're the guys we need to stick with for a while, because they've shown that they've got the skills. They just need to build that experience now.
Before we get away from Noah, last one on him. There's now 13 tests before the Lions series next year. They're 1 from 1. Do you just continue to go, you know what, Tom Liner, who's 21, he had a couple of okay touches on the weekend. Clearly the ball to Tom Wright frees him up, and it was delivered early, which is well played. I thought defensively he was okay. But do you just go to Noah, these first 6 tests of the year, they're yours, and I want you to just be able to build into it, express yourself, back yourself, and just know that whatever else is there externally, you're our 10.
Yeah, I think that was a tactic back in the day that Eddie Jones used with Chris Latham. Just told him, you've got 5, and it's another guy who had a huge amount of potential. It's an interesting one. I don't know. I definitely thought that in the past, and I probably would say in this scenario that would make sense, because you give guys that bit of confidence, so that nervousness that we're talking about on the weekend, that kind of gets limited, because you're like, listen, mate, you will be picked for the next 3 or 4, so build yourself. However, it's got to be horses for courses. If this is a kind of a guy who responds well to pressure on his heels, he's got to work every day, that kind of vibe, then you've got to be like, you've got to maybe mix selection up a little bit. But if it's a guy who needs that confidence, if it's a guy who needs a little bit of a pat on the back rather than a kick up the bum, then maybe you say, listen, we'll give you the next few, and then you build into that. So look, only the coaches will know, and in particular for positions that are decision making callers, like, you can probably see a bit of value in taking that approach.
Yeah, I just think it's a fascinating one with a really short window leading into the Lions. I just think it's imperative that we find out more about Noah over the next couple of months as to whether or not he's an international 10. He's 24. He's going to be turning 25. He's just finished his 5th season of Super Rugby. It's probably about now when you can start to make a better judgment call on whether or not someone's going to be a top quality 10. And you think about those that are around him as well. Like Ben Donaldson's only played a handful of Wallaby matches, more of a running 10, I'd say, than a conductor. Tom Liner, 21, 20 minutes off the bench. To think that he might be a option to wear the 10 jersey against the Lions in a second year of Test rugby, the odds would be stacked against him, I'd say, to be thinking that he's going to be a person. So I'm just trying to give him, Noah, as much time as possible. If you're not going to go to a Bernard Foley or someone like that overseas, a James O'Connor, who's probably back very soon, probably will come up against Wales in a couple of weeks' time, you've got to make sure that you do everything in your favour to get Noah's confidence and find out everything about him.
I completely agree with that, and it's a very good point. I think we mentioned it earlier with him and the Tom Wright. These are guys who, for me, we need to start building that spine. It is very interesting that Tom Liner was picked over Donaldson, particularly considering the versatility of a guy like Ben Donaldson. So maybe there's an eye on, as you're saying, at getting Tom Liner in there. I don't know. But yeah, it would be interesting to see what Joe's thinking. I think he very much probably has a view of what he wants a 10 to look like, and then he picks along that way. So look, we definitely need to stick with him. I think, in my opinion, Noah would be starting the next 5, 6, and then you see where you're at after that.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, and just whilst we to bookend all of that, guys like Tate Edmund, there's a reason why he's not in New Zealand at the moment. I think RA is just keeping a close look at him. Guys like Joe Schmidt still rate him highly, so it could be a fluid thing later on, but it's very much open, and it's open for Noah to really stamp his name over that jersey for the foreseeable future. Changes this week. Would you make many? As I said, I thought the debutants were all really quality. Charlie Cahill, what he provided off the bench, as well as Isaac Kalia, was superb. Jeremy Williams, I thought was quality. I could see him playing 6 at some point in time, whether or not it's this week. Perhaps Allen starts at tight head, but I would like to see them pick and stick a little bit. I don't think there's need for experimentation or rotation. I think confidence and momentum would be the most powerful thing, not just thing for the Wallabies, but also for the desperate Australian rugby population that wants to see a side win and get behind them and find some momentum before a rugby championship.
Yeah, the objective of rotation is to give guys who previously haven't had a go, and we're already doing that. We've got 7 debutants, and so I think rotation would be, these are guys who haven't had a go, so that, they're one game into their career, hopefully of a long career, and so you probably go, let's work from that. Let's learn what it's like to, play a test match in big stadium, travel, be sore, and prepare for another test match in a big stadium. Like, these are kind of experiences that you can't fake. So, look, I think I'd be pretty surprised if there were many changes. Like you mentioned, Alan, that's, like for like, it's quite an easy one. If there's mixes around in certain parts of the back row where guys, have bit heavier load, but yeah, I'd be very surprised if there were any changes.
The one might be Lenny Katau, who wasn't effectively ruled out until early last week. I wrote the story on Sunday that he had a hamstring and was likely to miss the match. That proved to be the case. I don't think it was too bad. He stuck with the camp. My understanding, Joey Walton's let go now, and he was probably in there just as a bit of precaution, especially off the back of David Faluai withdrawing, which there's still a little bit of uncertainty and a lack of clarity around. Is he going to be coming back into camp soon? But I thought Josh Fluke was everything that you expect of him. He was solid, defensively really sound. He made one really good decision when he could have passed, but decided to tuck the ball under his arms and stepped off his left, made some meters. They got a penalty next phase when Taniela picks up the ball and catches him offside. So he did everything he could to impress and perhaps get another opportunity if Len's not 100%. But I think you could tell left foot, you can't understate the importance of having a left footer at times into a team. We've seen Henry Slade, what he can do with England, having a left foot, South Africa, even Geordie Barrett on the weekend, kicking off his left at times too. It gives you an ability to manipulate defence. So, and he's actually got a long raking boot, does Lenny. So he might be one of the few guys that potentially comes back in.
Yeah, and that would be injury, return from injury. So look, Josh Fluke was great. I thought, I think he's a quality rugby player, and I think he'll only grow at this level. He does have that feeling about him that you think he might be almost made for tests. Like, you just get the feeling he's a calm, sensible guy as well. He's got all the skills. Not a huge X factor in one or the other, but just very, decent across all aspects of his game, and it's probably what you want at 13. And look, if he goes back to the bench or he's out of the 23 this week, it wouldn't be a selection. It's very much because Lenny's back. And, Lenny's been through that 4 years ago. He was in and out of the team early on. And, yeah, look, the left foot is massive in Test match in particular. I think a guy like Billy LaRue was picked on the weekend purely because of the left foot. Because traditionally they've got a lot of options back there. So, it's a huge, it changes the defensive pattern. It messes with the fullback, particularly at test level when there's a lot more kicking and exits are very important. That left foot's huge.
Apart from Drew Mitchell, there hasn't been too many left footers with the Wallabies for quite a while as well.
Yeah, Jesse Mogg was a raking left boot for a little while. I know that because like Jake White, when he was at Brumbies, he literally would pick a fullback if they had a left foot boot. It was him and Robbie Coleman, I think, at the time for us, and they had a left foot boot. And he was very much about exits, kind of where you build your game, exiting your territory. And yeah, having a left foot option just changes that. So yeah, it is big. Obviously Matt Giddo, left foot, not necessarily fullback, but having it anywhere, in the back line, you can kind of mess around with your alignment and get them into first receiver. So yeah, it's a handy thing to have.
All right. Switching gears a little bit, what did you make of the All Blacks? You were already a couple of scotches deep at that point in time. but I watched. I was kind of watching it in the corner of my eye because the Wallaroos were playing. We'll come to them later on as well. The Wallaroos were playing and they had a massive win against Fiji. And on the other hand, New Zealand, who we probably expected to be too good for England, were up against it completely. And 16-15, they prevail in the end. First match in charge for Scott Robertson. Blimey, he looks like a relieved man at the end. It was quite comical to see him just blow up a little bit when Damien McKenzie got timed out.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see his interviews. He looked emotional, like he was jittery. He almost looked like he was on something at one point. His eyes were like this, and you're like, "Good God, this guy!" He's clearly under a lot of pressure. The All Blacks surprised me a little bit. Their game management, I don't think, was as good as we'd come to expect. Playing a lot around the middle part of the field against, I think you'll see a huge change this week. But against an English team whose line speed was incredible and their aggression at the breakdown was just kept them in the game. There were times where the Kiwis would score an amazing try in that first half. You'd be like, "Oh, this is going to blow out." And the English just hung in there. So look, I think tactically they probably got it a little bit wrong. I think you'll see them change this week for sure. They'll play a bit more pragmatic, particularly around the middle parts of the field. But yeah, it was a good game. Geez, it was physical. It was a very physical game. I dare say playing the English in Otago for the first game was probably, the New Zealand Rugby Union probably thinking, all right, under the roof, let's try to play a high-paced game and try to blow them out of the water and kind of, set the series up. And the English kind of, didn't read that memo. So it was, I didn't expect it to be that close, that's for sure.
Oh, I'd almost bit them in the backside. And there's something about playing under the roof. It does seem like a massive leveler. Like every time the Wallabies go under there, I know you played them in 2013. Then there's the heartbreak in 2017 with Kieran Reid plucking the ball and Beauden Barrett once again scoring. But then even last year, of course, 23-20. I agree. I think it'll be a completely different proposition this weekend. Eden Park, New Zealand back to their real home ground where they've had so much success. But what about let's just stick with New Zealand for a second. And I completely agree. They played a lot of rugby, even in the first half. It was helter skelter, but there was at times where they weren't making any traction. They weren't going through the middle. I don't think Damien McKenzie, I know that there was an awesome crossfield kick and he had a couple of great moments. He almost burst onto that ball that was pulled back from Marty Sevilla for the forward pass, but it didn't help him, did it? To kind of get rid of the tag that he's not a All Blacks number 10 in Test rugby.
Yep, and Richie Mo'unga in the stands, keeping a close eye. Oh God, did you see that clip of him and Shannon Frizzell in the bus? That was awesome. Brilliant. Oh God, you get a shot.
Need more
there.
of it.
Yeah, exactly. No, look, without Beauden Barrett as well. So you got Stephen Perifetta there, who is had a good game. Obviously, set up a nice wee try, but yeah, it's hard to know what the plan was, if they wanted to play, if Scott Robinson really, under the roof thought, listen, we can play a little bit more around there. So I think we probably need to understand that. You know, it's a little bit hard to analyze it after just one game. I think after this week's game, we get a little bit more of a picture in terms of his temperament. But yeah, you're right. Look, all the kind of things that you maybe the criticisms of Damien Kenzie at this level maybe just showed a little bit. But at the same time, as you say, he can break a game apart as well. And look what he did in those moments that he had, you know, can often be done at 15 as well. So it is a little bit difficult.
I just see him as the perfect utility sub in World Rugby. I don't think there'd be a better option. A bit like when a head coach is a head coach and an assistant wants to be a head coach, but they're not. I almost feel like Damien should just accept that he's like Kurtley Beale in the 2015 World Cup. Just can be the ultimate utility injection. Just staying with England as well. Chandler Cunningham South, it might be the world's longest international name at the moment. New Zealand raised, he left to England only a few years back. And wow, he is huge there, the blindside flanker who made his debut earlier in the year, but he's got a bright future. You're right about their defensive prowess. Like George Furbank was putting big shots on. He's the fullback there. And I was very impressed with their ability to create as well. Marcus Smith had some really nice moments, one or two kicks where you think probably not quite right, but Ollie Lawrence showed a fair bit about him as well. I've always been a big fan of their hooker, Jamie George, but Maro Toja grew a leg. It was just a proper test match. So yeah, everyone.
Maro lost a dread and grew a leg, didn't he? I couldn't recognise him. It's an England team as well without some, you know, guys like Manu Tuilangi. You know, so you've got, you've got a few open places. I think you start seeing Slade taking a bit more of a leadership role. Furbank was brilliant. He was really good. You know, obviously no George Ford. You see Finn Smith coming off the bench, who he's got a ton of raps on him up there, so that'll be interesting as well. So yeah, I think they're building something pretty decent there. Like, you know, the English should always be strong. They've got so much player resources and clubs and that, but it is they're always dangerous. And I think particularly with Borthwick there, who brings that hard edge mentality, real kind of old school English. They'll be a difficult team.
I'll tell you what, we have also unearthed the biggest baby face in world rugby with Finn Baxter. Remember Adrian Strauss, how much of a baby face he had for so long? He retired and everyone thought, what are you doing, mate? You're still 25. But Baxter, the 22-year-old from Wellington College, which is in Surrey, oh my God, he looks like a 16-year-old out there.
He came on and I said, so I was like, that he looks like a 4-year-old. You know what he looks like? He looks like if you put Instagram filter on you to like de-age you and just kind of like make everything a little bit puffy. Oh, what a boy.
I need one of those.
Yeah, you're telling me. But no, he was good though. He was I couldn't help but think, oh God, he's going to be in for a rough night. But look, if you're a prop playing for England, you've definitely got something there. It's a very tough position.
Well, you got Dan Cole on one side and Finn Baxter on the other. Chalk and cheese, those two. The box too good for Ireland, 27-20. Not necessarily a surprise at altitude. We saw the box flex their muscle at scrum time. I love the flex play by the South Africans to play Zombie right at the end in celebrations. No need to sing out Zombie when you've got Rassie though, right?
I know, and they were. I actually heard it. They did it before the game as well, which was interesting because I think the Irish would have been in the sheds, but you could just hear it. It would have been like that. That is going to be one of the most intimidating places to play in the world, I think. Pretoria, and yeah, they were good. It was interesting seeing Rassie do the change, the 6-2, and then he brought all 6 on. He actually said it in the pre-match. He said, no, he'll be looking to, you know, do something else, you know, maybe bring them on slowly. And then he does the whole kind of line change, offense come off, defense come on. And look, I can't listen to enough of him at the moment. I find him so interesting the way he thinks about the game. I think he's very much, he's kind of at the peak of his probably coaching career, to be fair, but he's got a team where he can really, he can inject new guys, and he's got guys, but like everything's just kind of firing at the moment.
Wow, it's incredible. 2 World Cups, and he's just returned as the head coach off the back of being the DOR with Jacques Nienaber there. But Tony Brown is there, which is an interesting one. Like, it's such an innovator of the game. We saw what he did with the Highlanders. He was the right-hand man of Jamie Joseph with the Brave Blossoms for several years as well. And now that Brown has one of the best backlines in the world, it'll be fascinating to see what he does and how South Africa innovate and change their game over the next couple of years leading into a World Cup in Australia in 2027. We saw the Sevens teams last week unveiled. We saw, the Aussie men's side has already arrived on French soil ahead of the Olympics, but we also saw the Wallaroos lead into that Wallabies game, a crushing 64-5 match result, which is a great response off the back of their Pacific Four struggles. They're going to, I don't know if it's the best preparation, but it must be, in terms of confidence and feeling good about it yourself, great preparation leading into taking on the Black Ferns this weekend at Ballymore on Saturday afternoon. So be sure to tune into that. But Miller, 4 tries. I thought that Desi Miller was going to get a 5th there at the end, but she got pulled down just behind. But she's got some serious wheels.
Yeah, definitely. Look, it's a big win. As you say, after a tough pack 4, it's good to just get going again. And we know there's a lot of talent in this squad, and we know with recently what's happened governance wise and sponsorship wise, that we're only going to improve and we're only going to get better. So getting these wins are important. The Kiwis is going to be a very tough one, obviously, but I think just the more the girls can keep playing together, hopefully after Sevens we might get a few back as well. We can start getting some momentum into another home World Cup actually a little bit later as well. So yeah, it's exciting, it's good, but yeah, tough one this week at Ballymore.
Yeah, good to see Eva Kapani back starting, and Morgan starting. The two of them were quality as well. All right, maybe just lastly before we give this a wrap, Dan McKellar announced as Waratah's head coach last Friday, but we broke the news on the Raw on Wednesday mid-morning, and great to have someone like Dan, his rugby intellect, back in Aussie rugby.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously a bit of drama with what went up there at Tigers, but awesome to have him back. And I think, look, the Waratahs will be, after having not the best of luck, particularly in the front row this year, I dare say having a ready-made coach like Dan McKellar just fall into the laps as they did. You go, Simon, well done, tick. This job's easy. He's done the first part. And I think most importantly, and I think you might have written about this, is signing players now. The fact that Dan McKellar's there, the fact that Simon's there, it starts to have a feel of, okay, this is a team that I might want to go to, or in terms of attracting actual talent, it's important.
So on that, one of the first things Dan's been doing, and he was already kind of actively asking people what's happening with certain players before he signed, but since signing as well, really ramped up that. So people like Rob Leota, he's getting on the phone and he's actually saying, I really want you to come to the Waratahs, trying to sell the dream. That wasn't happening previously. What they were selling, they were selling a state without a coach. They had a general manager who was doing it part-time with his role with Rugby Australia as well. It wasn't exactly an attractive thing, but what does it do when a head coach tries to get you back to Australian rugby or tries to bring you to a franchise? And you clearly got brought back from England when you were up at Leicester as well. I know Michael Checker, one of his real strengths was that personal relationship he had with the player. What's it like when a head coach goes after you?
It instills confidence. And look, the main thing ultimately is Dan's record. So you as a player, if you get a coach like that wanting you, you start going, okay, then, it just gets a bit of momentum. And for guys who were thinking about it but unsure, geez, it changes the picture massively. It really does. It becomes a genuine option because Dan's the kind of guy who will figure it out. You start looking at the spine of their club, in particular with Simon and Dan there, you start going, all right, they're probably going to start making some decent decisions. They've got some experience there. And look, I think it's a great, as much as it probably kills Dan to coach the Waratahs because no one likes him as a Queenslander and then a Brumby. Look, it's great for Australian rugby. It's awesome. And I'll be very, very interested to see player-wise and then even coach-wise who they end up getting.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't surprise me if guys like Brad Harris was at the Rebels, but his involvement with Simon Louis at the World Cup last year, he spent some time in Canberra as well when he was cutting his teeth in rugby. Other people like Tim Sampson maybe as the attack coach as well. What Peter Hewitt does, I'm not quite sure up at Leicester. You might have more of an idea than I do, but my understanding is Dan Palmer's less likely to come back, and immediately jump back into the rugby coaching. But he's someone that Australian rugby needs to keep tabs on and hopefully snap up as soon as they can as well.
Yeah. Dan's one of my closest mates, so I probably know a little bit more there. But look, he's a guy who's very well talented, and I think Peter Hewitt was an interesting one. He's
a former Waratah as well.
Well, yeah, but he also took his family over there. It was a big reason. Was having the kids schooled in an English school, like English speaking, as opposed to Japan. So it's a bit different when you are trying to bring a whole family over rather than just one guy. So it might be a little bit more complicated than that. But there's a guy just north of the Central Coast and Scott Wisemantle who no doubt is on everyone's kind of call list. Look, I don't know what the solution will be. I just know that Dan will probably find a pretty good one. So that's the important thing.
All right. I think that's a good wrap. Looking forward to the second test. Tony Harper and I are going to be doing a instant reaction on Saturday night. I'll be down there at Amy Park. It'll be a great evening, a celebration for Melbourne Rugby. I'm sure it'll be an emotional one for the Rebels players who get to play at Amy Park once again. Several players like Isaac Callier in the frame, but even Robbie Valetani, you grew up in Melbourne as well. Awesome opportunity to show the pathways that are so important to keep alive, given that the Rebels are no longer.
On that, or not on that, but like on kind of peripheral stuff, wasn't it awesome to see Hoops get what he deserved? And it's often a thing in Australia, just rugby. It's you never really know when the end point is. Guys like David Pocock, you don't know that it might be his last test in Australia, or Sikopi as well. And Hoops is the same. Who would have thought that his last test would have been a few years ago? But it was so nice to see Rugby Australia make that effort, because he is a absolute legend of the game, and to see that him get that moment, and just even all the young players coming up, seeing that on the pedestal, and seeing someone who's achieved well and get what they deserve. I thought that was really special.
Yeah, great acknowledgement. You got to tip your hat to them there, and also just the fact that it's a lovely arena to come out, because they walk through their friends and family there. And I'm not sure if you played at the New Allianz, but it's a lovely way to send off Australia's most capped Wallabies captain. More than 120 tests, the Super Rugby winner for the Waratahs in 2014. So it would have been, despite the fact that he was on the commentary team for Stam, it would have been a nice moment where I'm sure he'll think greater about the game, even though he already does. But more of that stuff certainly needed.
Very special.
All right. Cheers, Matt. Thanks for that tribute. Very fair, but also, so Tony Harper Saturday night, be out Sunday morning at the very latest. Instant Reaction podcast, always a fascinating one to chew over, particularly when you don't have times to perhaps review and reflect and go through all the footage. So looking forward to that one too. But until then, enjoy the rugby.